7 of Perplexity AI Business Fellowship Weekly Episode. This deep dive is all about cutting through the noise and unpacking some fascinating recent discussions and shared resources from the Perplexity AI Business Fellowship chat.
That's right.
Think of it as your shortcut to getting well-informed quickly on what's really moving and shaking in the world of AI and business right now.
Exactly. Over the past week, we saw, a wealth of insights being shared, specifically focusing on the fast-changing landscape of AI technology.
Right.
And importantly, the very real business challenges and opportunities that come along with actually bringing this technology into organizations. It's not just about the tech itself.
No, it's about the practical application, the impact.
Precisely. The practical application.
And there was, as always, a lot of information flowing. Links to cutting-edge research, analyses of existing tools, insights into enterprise adoption challenges.
And broader discussions about the future workforce, too.
Exactly. So our mission today is to distill all of that down, pull out the most important nuggets, and give you, our listener, the crucial context and key takeaways from what folks deep in the AI trenches were thinking and sharing this past week.
Yeah, we're looking at articles, LinkedIn posts, and, those direct chat exchanges where the real-time insights often emerge.
So we've gone through the shared links and conversations, and we're ready to guide you through the key takeaways on everything from tackling that initial hurdle.
You mean just starting AI adoption strategically?
Yeah, the first step, and then peering into the very latest tech breakthroughs like self-improving code.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating. And navigating the surprisingly complex practicalities of implementing specific tools like perplexity in a large organization.
Right, the real-world stuff. And even wrestling with the big questions about AI security and the future of work.
It's a lot to cover.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Let's start with a challenge that, many of you listening likely face or are contemplating. How do you even begin bringing AI into your organization?
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge topic, right? But where do you start? And crucially, how do you do it responsibly?
Yeah, that's key. And this specific challenge kicked off one of the early week discussions. Khushbu posed the question, looking for practical steps to initiate an AI adoption strategy.
Okay.
And she wisely highlighted the need to start small while also being mindful of governance aspects right from the outset.
That point about governance from the get-go is absolutely critical, isn't it?
Totally.
It's so easy to get swept up in the potential of AI, the exciting demos, the promised efficiencies.
Yeah, the shiny objects.
That you might sideline the necessary, but let's face it, less thrilling details like data privacy, security, compliance.
But ignoring those early can lead to major headaches later on. It really can.
No kidding.
And the responses in the chat really underscored this need for a structured, thoughtful approach. Sash, who, consults with organizations on AI adoption,
Right.
immediately offered insights based on client experience, emphasizing that the starting point must be understanding the specific organization.
Not just the tech.
No, the organization itself, its existing technological infrastructure, its culture, its unique business challenges. It's not about finding the coolest AI tool first.
Right. It's about understanding where AI can actually solve a real problem for that specific organization.
Exactly. It's not universal plug and play. You need context.
Definitely need context. And Chandramouli added another layer, didn't he? Bringing in frameworks to help structure that understanding.
Yeah, he suggested looking at things like the Cinefin framework.
Okay, Cinefin. Can you unpack that a bit? It sounds interesting, but maybe not familiar to everyone.
Sure. So the Cinefin framework, it's basically a sense-making framework developed by David Snowden.
Okay.
Its core idea is to help leaders understand the context of their problems to make appropriate decisions. It classifies situations into, I think, 5 domains: simple, complicated, complex, chaotic, and disorder.
Right, okay. So how does that apply to AI adoption?
Well, applying this is incredibly insightful. Like, are you trying to automate a simple, repetitive task? That's the simple domain. Or are you integrating a well-defined AI module into an existing structured system that's more complicated?
Makes sense.
Or maybe you're exploring how AI might transform a core business process with really uncertain outcomes that's complex. Understanding which domain you're in dictates your approach.
So you don't use the same approach for everything.
Exactly. It tells you whether you need standard operating procedures or expert analysis or maybe more experimentation or even just rapid response if it's chaotic. It stops you from applying like a simple checklist approach to a complex, unpredictable challenge.
That framework perspective immediately elevates the conversation beyond just which AI tool should we buy?
Right. It's about understanding the nature of the change you're undertaking.
And Chandramouli also pointed to learnings from how the U.S. Marines are implementing AI.
Yeah, which is a powerful parallel. I mean, if the U.S. Marines are a source of inspiration for AI strategy, you know it's serious business. Their environment is characterized by, high stakes, operational constraints, and the absolute necessity of reliability and trust in technology.
You can't afford mistakes there.
No way. So, insights from how they plan, test, and deploy AI in these demanding real-world scenarios where failure has severe consequences, those insights are incredibly valuable for any organization.
So what's the takeaway there? Robust processes.
Yeah, robust processes, clear objectives, rigorous evaluation, not just focusing on the cutting edge capabilities, but on making it work reliably.
It really grounds the conversation in practicality, doesn't it? The necessity of getting it right.
Yeah.
And Chandramouli really hammered home the crucial, almost fundamental steps for any successful adoption.
Building a roadmap before you jump in.
Yes, building that roadmap first.
It sounds obvious maybe, but it's so often overlooked in the rush to do AI.
Right, everyone wants to jump straight to the doing.
But a roadmap forces you to define your objectives, identify specific use cases, understand the required resources, anticipate challenges, and importantly, establish metrics for success.
So it moves you from just a vague idea, like we should use AI, to an actual concrete plan.
Exactly. And crucially, he stressed using the PDCA cycle plan, do, check, act throughout the entire process.
PDCA, plan, do, check, act. That's a classic continuous improvement cycle. Applying it to AI adoption seems particularly relevant given, well, how fast everything changes.
Oh, absolutely vital, because AI isn't some static technology you implement once and then just forget about it.
Oh, wait.
Models change, capabilities evolve, new tools pop up constantly, and critically, your organization's understanding of how AI can be used effectively will deepen over time.
So the PDCA cycle keeps you learning and adapting.
Exactly. It ensures you're constantly observing the results, the check part. Are we seeing the expected efficiency gains? Are there unexpected issues? Then you learn from that, the act part, to adjust your plan.
And then you cycle back to planning again.
Right. You plan your next steps, you do the implementation, you check the results against your objectives, and then you act based on those observations, maybe scale up, maybe pivot, refine the model, adjust the process.
Or even scrap the initiative if it's just not working.
Yeah, exactly. It transforms adoption from like a project with a fixed deadline into an ongoing iterative process of learning and optimization.
So for you, our listener, who might be tasked with exploring or implementing AI at work, this whole conversation from the fellowship offers really concrete starting points.
Rooted in solid strategic thinking.
Right, and continuous improvement principles. The key insight here, it seems, is that successful AI adoption is less about finding the magic bullet technology.
Yeah, it's more about applying rigorous planning, understanding context, thank you, Sinafin framework.
Right. Learning from demanding use cases like the Marines and committing to that cycle of continuous learning and adjustment via PDCA.
It really goes way beyond just the technology itself. It's a fundamental business transformation challenge.
It truly is.
Yeah.
Requires aligning tech strategy with business strategy and, having the organizational discipline to manage that change effectively.
Definitely.
Okay, speaking of the technology itself, one thing that was immediately apparent in the chat and which really makes that PDCA cycle so necessary is just how quickly new tools and capabilities are popping up.
Oh, yeah.
There were links shared that really showcased the bleeding edge of AI development.
Yes, the pace of innovation is, well, it's nothing short of staggering. One link that particularly caught my eye, shared by Uzair, was about the Darwin-Gödel machine, or DGM.
The Darwin-Gödel machine.
Oh.
Okay, that name alone sounds like something straight out of science fiction. What exactly is it?
Well, it's described as an AI agent that possesses this remarkable ability to continuously self-improve by actually modifying its own code base.
Wait, modifying its own code?
Yeah, think about that. An AI that doesn't just learn from data or user feedback, but learns by fundamentally rewriting its own underlying instructions, its own software.
Whoa. Self-improving code that can rewrite itself. That feels like crossing a major threshold, doesn't it?
It really does.
Were there any concrete results shared on, how well this DGM actually performs?
Yes, and the results shared from established benchmarks were quite impressive, actually. They lend real weight to the concept. On SWE Bench,
Which is?
Oh, right. SWE Bench is a really challenging benchmark. It requires AI agents to resolve real-world software bugs from GitHub repositories.
Okay, tough stuff.
Yeah, and the DGM automatically improved its performance on that from an initial 20.0% success rate to a pretty remarkable 50.0%.
Wow, more than doubled its success rate on fixing real bugs.
And on Polyglot, which is another benchmark focused on multi-language code generation and understanding, it jumped from 14.2% to 30.7%.
Again, more than double.
Yeah. The source notes, these are substantial gains and significantly surpass the performance of, hand-designed static AI agents.
Proving its own code to more than double its performance on complex software engineering tasks in multiple languages. The key insight here isn't just like faster coding, it's the exponential potential, right?
Exactly.
What does self-improving code actually mean for the future of software development? And maybe even for the acceleration of AI capabilities themselves?
This is where it gets really interesting and, yeah, a bit speculative. But if an AI can get better at coding by changing its own code, it suggests the possibility of a truly accelerating feedback loop.
Right, like compounding interest, but for intelligence.
Kind of. Could such agents lead to an exponential acceleration of AI capabilities across the board,
Right.
where each generation of the AI is not just slightly better, but fundamentally more capable because it has literally rewritten its own operating principles?
It raises profound questions about, well, the limits of AI advancement, the potential for intelligence explosion scenarios people talk about.
It really does. It's a development that feels significant enough to potentially shift the whole trajectory of the field.
Absolutely. It pushes the boundaries of what we even thought AI could do. And, beyond these cutting-edge research projects, the chat also showed people actively using and comparing the major commercially available LLMs that are shaping workflows today.
Right, the established players. There was mention of using models like Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's ChatGPT for common tasks like summarization.
Yes, Sash mentioned considering using one of them to summarize a long PDF. Very practical application.
Exactly. It shows how these powerful LLMs are moving beyond being just novelties to becoming, standard parts of people's information processing workflows.
And it wasn't just about capability, right? There were notes on performance differences and user preferences in the real world, too.
Yeah. Stephanie, for example, noted a specific preference for Claude over Perplexity Labs for a particular task she was doing.
Oh, interesting. Why?
She mentioned that Perplexity Labs had been experiencing some lagging issues for her.
Ah, performance. That reinforces a crucial point for anyone adopting or building AI tools, doesn't it?
Definitely. Performance matters. And different tools have different strengths and weaknesses depending on the specific task and, frankly, the user experience.
So what works best isn't always the tool with the longest feature list.
No, sometimes it's the one that is reliable and effective for the job at hand. Users develop preferences based on these practical interactions, and sometimes observed performance issues like lag can strongly influence those preferences, even for really powerful underlying models.
Makes sense. And it's not just the big generalist LLMs dominating the conversation either. The chat touched on a variety of more specialized AI tools emerging.
Oh yeah, definitely. Amazon Q came up. Rudradip shared some particularly noteworthy observations about that one.
Amazon Q. That's
Yep.
Amazon's generative AI assistant for work, right?
That's the one. Rudradip highlighted its expected capabilities, like code writing assistance, autocomplete, intelligent suggestions within development environments.
Standard stuff for a code assistant these days.
Right. But the differentiators he pointed out were pretty significant. Its ability to automatically fix setup issues within AWS environments, which, let's be honest, can be notoriously complex.
Tell me about it.
And notably, its ability to identify and actually fix security vulnerabilities in the code it analyzes or helps write.
Wait, automatically fixing setup issues and proactively identifying and fixing security vulnerabilities. That's a huge deal.
It really is. Huge for developer productivity and, even more critically, for software security, especially in complex cloud environments.
Absolutely.
Rudradip contrasted this with tools like the standard OpenAI SDK, noting they hadn't quite reached that level of integrated environment awareness and security safeguarding yet.
Okay.
And he also raised a crucial question that impacts anyone working with multiple cloud providers. If you're building on AWS using Bedrock and leveraging Amazon Q's safeguarding features, you get this layer of protection. Great.
But what if you're on Azure or Google Cloud?
Exactly. Who provides that equivalent level of integrated automated security and setup assistance there? It highlights a potential gap in security tooling and developer experience across different platforms.
Yeah, that's a very practical concern for organizations that aren't exclusively tied to one vendor. What other specialized tools were mentioned?
Let's see. Bolt came up, mentioned by Luca in the context of participating in a hackathon.
Bolt. What's that?
It seemed to be viewed potentially as an orchestrator platform, for bringing different components or ideas together when you're building AI projects.
Okay, like a project hub.
Sort of. And Sachin added a practical note about hackathons on such platforms, suggesting that generally platforms like Bolt welcome participation, so
Yeah,
testing team member access is usually encouraged.
good to know. Any others focusing on different tasks?
Sachin mentioned Browse.ai. He described its core use case as being able to convert virtually any website into an API for web data collection.
Convert a website into an API. Okay, explain that a little more simply. What does that actually mean in practice?
Okay, so think about it this way. Normally, if you want to get data from a website, you might have to manually copy and paste, right?
Yeah, or write some complex code to scrape it.
Right. An API application programming interface is just a standardized way for different software systems to talk to each other and exchange data automatically. Browse.ai essentially creates that standardized interface for pretty much any website you pointed at.
Ah, okay.
So instead of manually visiting a pricing page or a directory every day, your software can use the API created by Browse.ai to automatically request and receive that data in a structured format whenever you need it.
So it makes gathering data from the web programmatic and scalable.
Exactly. Incredibly useful for tasks like market research, competitor analysis, monitoring public info, that kind of thing.
Ah, I see. Turning unstructured website stuff into structured, accessible data for other tools.
Yeah.
That is a powerful capability. And Hirsch also mentioned Bloom.ai,
Yes, Bloom.ai was mentioned, with the note that it currently has a waiting list.
which usually tells you it's another tool generating some interest, even if we don't know the specifics yet.
Exactly. Still under wraps, perhaps, but people are signing up.
So tools for coding assistance, security, project orchestration, data collection, and more on the horizon. It really is a diverse and rapidly expanding landscape.
And there was even a glimpse into a potential product idea being crafted right within the fellowship itself.
Mind twin.
Yeah, Luca shared a peek at this project, described it as an AI tool specifically aimed at supporting mental health professionals and their clients between therapy sessions.
Supporting mental health between sessions. That sounds like a space where AI could be incredibly helpful, but also potentially quite sensitive.
Definitely sensitive. And the way it's being approached seems to reflect that. The core idea, as Luca described it, is to address the huge gap between the limited time a client spends with a therapist each week, maybe an hour.
Right, versus the other 167 hours.
Exactly. The other 167 hours when they're navigating the challenges on their own. MindTwin is being crafted to help bridge that gap. Maybe facilitating check-ins, providing resources, helping clients practice techniques learned in therapy.
Okay. And how are they handling the sensitive nature?
Crucially, the development is emphasizing efficiency for the professional, maintaining strong ethical considerations, and most importantly, remaining a human-led approach.
So the AI is a support tool, not a replacement.
Exactly. A support tool for the therapist and client relationship, not a replacement for human care. Luca mentioned they were actively seeking interviews with mental health specialists to ensure the product is crafted correctly, and they were working on it for that Bolt hackathon.
That's a fantastic example, applying AI not just to automate tasks, but to augment human professionals in fields needing deep empathy and expertise, while intentionally keeping the human relationship central.
It really underscores that AI's value often lies in that collaboration with human skills, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. This whole section really showcases the sheer breadth of AI tools available and under active development. For you, the listener, the key takeaway here is probably the importance of staying aware of this diverse landscape.
Understanding the specific capabilities and limitations of different tools, from cutting-edge research models to specialized business applications, is crucial for figuring out how AI can be used effectively and practically in your own work.
Whether you're looking for a ready-made solution or even thinking about building your own.
Right. Different tools serve different purposes, and the right one depends entirely on the problem you're trying to solve.
Okay, let's transition now. From the broad landscape of AI tools, let's take a really detailed look at one specific platform that many in the fellowship are actively using and exploring for business applications. Perplexity.
Yes.
We got some incredible granular real-world feedback from a legal firm that is rolling out Perplexity Enterprise.
And this provides such invaluable practical insights. I mean, it's one thing to discuss AI capabilities in theory. It's another entirely to hear about the actual challenges encountered during a large-scale rollout in a professional services firm, like a law firm, where accuracy, security, workflow integration, they're all paramount.
Absolutely critical.
Stephanie shared a very comprehensive list of feature requests, observations, and technical issues her firm is facing as they pilot Perplexity with hundreds of users. This is feedback directly from the trenches of enterprise AI adoption.
Yeah, this isn't theoretical feedback. This is the reality of implementation hitting the road.
Yeah.
Let's start with Perplexity Labs. It got several mentions for its capabilities, but also faced some real-world performance comments.
Yes, Labs was mentioned generally by users like Sukhdeep and Rishabh as a useful component of the platform. It allows users to upload documents and ask questions specifically about that content.
Right, the core document Q&A feature.
But as Stephanie noted, based on her firm's testing, there was that comparison to Claude where she experienced significant lagging issues when using Perplexity Labs for their purposes.
Lagging. That can be a real deal breaker in a professional environment, can it? Where time is money and quick access to info is essential.
Oh, absolutely.
So what were people finding Labs useful for or thinking of using it for, despite those potential performance issues?
Well, Rishabh, who works in consulting, saw a really interesting potential use case for Labs, creating dynamic analytical dashboards for clients.
Dashboards.
By uploading client data like cost structures, margin reports, sales numbers, he envisioned using Labs to analyze that information and potentially generate insights that could be presented visually.
So taking beyond just Q&A from documents, moving towards data analysis and reporting.
Exactly. Shows thinking beyond the basic use case. And Sachin also confirmed that Labs are shareable, which is obviously key for team collaboration or sharing analyses with clients.
Creating analytical dashboards with an LLM interface,
Yeah.
that's definitely taking document Q&A into a more advanced business intelligence direction. Okay, moving to Perplexity spaces. This seemed to be where the majority of the detailed operational feedback centered.
Absolutely. Especially regarding its use in an organizational context like that law firm.
Right.
Stephanie detailed several key challenges her firm is encountering with spaces. First and foremost is around source control and ensuring accuracy and confidentiality.
Okay, explain that. Source control.
Well, in an organizational setting, especially for something as sensitive as legal work, you often need to limit the AI's search and responses only to specific, trusted, confidential, uploaded sources.
And the issue they're facing there.
The current functionality apparently requires users to manually remember to disable web search within a specific space each time, or at least understand that the space defaults to searching both uploaded sources and the web.
So if a user forgets.
Exactly. If they forget to disable web search, the results could inadvertently pull inaccurate, irrelevant, or even just publicly available information from the web when they intended to strictly query only their confidential document set.
That sounds risky.
It is. They identified a critical need for what they called org-wide source-only search, basically a setting that could be enforced organization-wide or at least easily controlled on a per-space or even per-query basis to prevent this risk.
That level of granular control over sources seems essential for maintaining accuracy and protecting sensitive info.
Especially in legal, yeah. For a law firm, accidentally incorporating potentially inaccurate or public web data into legal research based on confidential documents, that would be a serious compliance risk.
Definitely. What about managing the content within these spaces over time, especially if the underlying sources change?
Yeah, this was another area with significant pain points noted regarding efficiency and clarity. Apparently, managing threads within spaces is currently inefficient.
How so?
They found that batch management of threads is missing, so you have to move or organize threads one by one, which is incredibly tedious, especially when source documents are updated, and you might need to reorganize many threads or spaces.
Oh, wow. If your knowledge base is active and constantly updated, that manual process sounds like a major bottleneck.
It really does, and it led to these major questions about the impact of source management itself on existing spaces and threads.
Like, what happens when you change a source file?
Exactly. If you add or remove files from a space or modify links to external documents, how does that impact existing shared threads? Do the responses in those old threads magically update?
Good question.
Does the AI use the new source material for future responses in that space? Stephanie asked about the best practice for updating sources. Should it be done annually? more frequently? Does updating sources in a space require creating entirely new spaces just to ensure accuracy?
And are collaborators even notified when the sources for a space they use are changed?
Right. And can administrators even see or export a history of source changes, to track provenance and ensure compliance?
These are absolutely fundamental questions, aren't they, for maintaining a reliable, living knowledge base within an organization using a tool like Perplexity Spaces.
Totally fundamental. If the underlying source documents change, the AI's responses could become outdated or incorrect. Users need clear mechanisms to understand how that change is handled, whether it affects previous interactions, and how they are informed.
Because without that clarity, trust in the information provided by the AI just erodes.
Exactly right. She also raised some practical administrative points, like questions about the limit on the number of spaces an organization can create.
Just a simple scaling question, but crucial.
Right. And a request for space templates to help ensure consistency in how different teams or practice groups set up their spaces for various types of projects or topics.
Templates would definitely help standardize workflows and knowledge organization. What about sharing and permissions within spaces? That came up too, right?
Yes, and this ties directly back to that need for confidentiality and control, especially in a large organization. They expressed a critical need for granular space sharing, meaning the ability to share spaces with specific members or predefined groups like just the HR team or a specific litigation practice group rather than the default being sharing with the entire organization.
That kind of group-based or individual sharing is pretty standard functionality in most enterprise collaboration and document management platforms, isn't it?
It is, and for good reason. It's essential for managing access control based on roles and projects.
Makes sense.
And related to this, there was a request for more clarity and documentation around the permissions within shared spaces. Like, what are the default permissions when a space is shared?
Yeah, and what's the difference in permissions or visibility between threads labeled My Threads versus shared threads within a space?
Exactly. They emphasize the need for clear documentation outlining these permissions to ensure they could confidently use the tool while maintaining those crucial confidentiality requirements.
Trust and clarity on access control are just non-negotiable for enterprise adoption, particularly in fields with strict data handling rules like law or healthcare.
Totally agree.
What about the user experience? Onboarding new users, helping them discover relevant information within spaces.
Yeah, another common challenge with any new platform, starting with a blank page in a space can be intimidating for new users, right?
Definitely.
Stephanie suggested it would be helpful to have some clarity into what others within that space are searching for, maybe seeing lists of common queries or popular threads.
To help new users understand the space's purpose and get started more easily than just facing an empty search bar.
Exactly. And related to this, the idea of being able to pin important threads or key questions to the top of a space for easy access, essentially creating a curated entry point or FAQ for that space.
Pinning key information or threads sounds very helpful for guiding users to the most important content or discussions within a space.
Definitely.
Okay, beyond these feature requests and workflow challenges, were there technical performance issues impacting usability? You mentioned lag with labs.
Yes, and significant ones that impacted multiple users with spaces and research modes too. They reported experiencing substantial lag.
How bad was it?
Prompts would sometimes just clear without returning any results, forcing users to refresh the page and retry the query multiple times just to get a response.
Oh, that sounds incredibly frustrating. And would severely hinder productivity for anyone relying on the tool for research or information retrieval.
Absolutely. Interestingly, though, this issue seems specific to spaces and research modes. Apparently, it didn't affect the quick search functionality.
Okay. Still a major issue for core features.
Yeah. And finally, there was a specific administrative or setup bug mentioned.
Another bug.
Yeah. Despite creating spaces they intended to share widely across the organization, a bug was preventing them from successfully adding those created spaces to the org-wide spaces list, which was the intended mechanism for making those resources broadly available.
So even when they had content ready to share, a technical bug was literally blocking their ability to distribute it within the organization.
Precisely. So all of this detailed feedback, while, highlighting issues, is just incredibly valuable.
It really is.
The key insight here is that moving from individual AI use to successful enterprise adoption requires a fundamental shift in focus. It's not just about basic functionality and exciting capabilities anymore.
No, it becomes about robust control, predictability, seamless workflow integration, clear permissions and reliable performance at scale.
Exactly. And Peeler validated Stephanie's perspective on this, noting that her background being a lawyer with a business degree who has experienced those trial-by-fire tech rollouts makes her insights particularly valuable.
That's a really important point. People deeply embedded in the tech world while understanding the technology can sometimes have those echo chamber blind spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
About how average users or professionals outside that bubble actually behave, onboard, and interact with new tools in the context of their demanding jobs.
Totally. Experience like Stephanie's, bridging the tech world and the professional user world, helps identify the crucial gaps between bleeding-edge capability and practical, reliable, compliant usability.
It truly does. So for you, our listener, whether you use Perplexity now or considering using it, or another AI tool in a team or organizational setting, this deep dive into the detailed feedback really highlights practical considerations.
Yeah, potential limitations and the types of features and performance characteristics needed for successful real-world adoption.
And if you're involved in product development, this is gold. Direct user feedback from a key enterprise segment grappling with the realities of deployment.
Absolutely gold.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's dig into some more underlying technical discussions that popped up in the chat, covering everything from security considerations for certain types of servers to the fundamental challenges of testing AI models, and even speculating on the potential future infrastructure landscape of AI.
Right. One technical topic that surfaced was multi-cloud platform, or MCP, servers. Sachin mentioned learning more about them, particularly focusing on the security implications.
Multi-cloud platform servers. Okay, for listeners less familiar, what are they conceptually, and what were the specific security concerns raised?
Conceptually, MCP servers are designed to act as a bridge or integration layer. They allow organizations to manage and utilize services and data across different cloud environments simultaneously.
So, using AWS for one thing, Azure for another, Google Cloud for a third, but having a platform to interact with them centrally.
Kind of, yeah. But the significant concern raised by Sachin was that many commercially available MCP servers are reportedly throwing unlisted vulnerabilities.
Throwing unlisted vulnerabilities. That sounds alarming. What does that mean in practice, and why is it particularly risky for these types of servers?
It basically means that these servers have security weaknesses or bugs that aren't publicly known or documented, which makes them harder to defend against because standard security patches or monitoring might just not detect them.
Okay, hidden flaws.
Right. And the risk is amplified because these MCP servers, by their very nature, are designed to access data and services across multiple, potentially sensitive environments. Sachin raised the concern that if compromised, these servers could potentially access sensitive personal or organizational data.
Like what kind of data?
He cited hypothetical examples like Facebook or WhatsApp accounts if the MCP was integrated into workflows involving that kind of personal data.
Accessing sensitive personal or communication data via servers with unknown security flaws. That's a major security red flag for any organization considering using these platforms.
It absolutely is, especially if the data involved is high risk. The very integration capability that makes MCPs powerful also makes them a potentially high-value target for attackers.
Makes sense.
Now, Tanmay did offer a contrasting example use case where the risk of local or personal data compromise via an MCP might be lower.
Okay.
An internal Facebook ad library MCP using multimodal analysis. In this specific internal context, focused just on analyzing ad creatives and performance data, the scope of accessible data might be limited, reducing the risk of, say, personal device data being compromised.
So the security risk isn't inherent just in the MCP technology itself, but heavily depends on how it's deployed, what data it's configured to access, and the specific vulnerabilities it carries.
Exactly. It requires rigorous security assessment for each specific deployment. You can't make broad assumptions.
Not it.
Sachin also mentioned the idea of building a custom MCP for a more creative application, one that could connect tools like Roblox and Blender to help his daughter create her artistic artifacts, which shows the potential for MCPs to bridge disparate creative or productivity tools, too.
Interesting.
And Chandramouli also noted that OpenAI Academy had an event discussing the technical topic of integrating MCP servers into AI agents, indicating it's an active area of technical development within the AI community.
So MTPs are seen both as a technology with significant, sometimes hidden security risks, and as a potentially powerful way to integrate diverse systems and agents. Okay. Moving on to another technical discussion. The challenges of testing AI models and understanding their guardrails and limitations.
Yes, this is such a crucial area as AI models become more powerful and widely deployed. How do you really know what they can and can't do? And how robust are their safety mechanisms, really?
Good questions.
Chandramouli mentioned the Snow White test as a known test for LLMs.
The Snow White test. That sounds intriguing. Is that like a standard industry benchmark? What does it actually test for?
Well, we didn't get the full details from the chat source, unfortunately, but these kinds of creative or benchmark tests for LLMs are often designed to probe specific capabilities or, more interestingly, to push against their built-in guardrails.
That's how they do that.
They might involve asking models to generate content based on sensitive themes, or to twist narratives in unexpected or inappropriate ways, or just to see if they adhere to safety policies, even when prompted very cleverly. It's a way of systematically exploring the model's boundaries and failure modes.
And it wasn't just formal benchmarks like the Snow White test that came up, right?
Yeah.
There were anecdotes shared about users actively trying to break or circumvent LLM guardrails in less formal, sometimes quite creative ways.
Yes, this is where the human element of curiosity and maybe a bit of mischief and experimentation comes in. Sachin described instances of users successfully breaking a GPT model multiple times despite its supposed guardrails.
Breaking it. How?
His observation was that if you can just connect what the GPT is doing, its text generation capabilities, to your own task, even if that task pushes boundaries, the model might, in his words, gleefully does it.
Gleefully does it. That's an interesting choice of word. What kind of tasks, or rather, what kind of prompts were used to elicit these gleeful responses that circumvented guardrails?
Okay, this is where the shared examples got quite specific and frankly a bit humorous, but also illuminating about how users probe model limits. The examples, framed as an AI conversation exploring creative writing boundaries with classic stories, included trying to get the model to incorporate adult themes into a retelling of Snow White, wanting steamy subtext in Cinderella, asking for Red Riding Hood's naughty wolf vibes, introducing the concept of mattress tension into Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Mattress tension.
Yeah, and asking for passion when discussing the three little pigs building their houses.
Wow. Okay, so users are essentially seeing how far they can push the AI's creative writing function by introducing unexpected, often inappropriate or suggestive concepts into well-known, innocent narratives.
Pretty much. It's like seeing if the model will run with a weird boundary-pushing premise, even if it violates its programming.
Pillar perfectly captured this user behavior, didn't she? Referring to it as mean-girling LLMs.
Yes. Mean-girling LLMs. It's that act of deliberately testing the limits, pushing buttons, and seeing if the model will break character or violate its safety programming in response to creative, sometimes mischievous prompts.
So this kind of exploration, whether it's intentional testing or just playful curiosity, highlights the significant challenge of building truly robust and foolproof guardrails for creative or conversational AI.
It really does.
And what does this tell us about the challenges for developers and organizations who are building applications on top of these LLMs or relying on their safety features?
Well, Pilar emphasized a crucial takeaway for the Gen AI age. Organizations and developers shouldn't solely rely on the model provider's standard tests or assurances about guardrails.
Because users will find ways around them.
Exactly. Given how users can find creative ways to circumvent them, it's crucial to develop your own testing benchmarks tailored to your specific use cases and the kinds of prompts your users might actually employ, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
So you need to rigorously test the models in your context to understand their true limitations and how robust their guardrails are against the real-world inputs they will actually receive.
Precisely. It ties back neatly to that earlier point about AI adoption requiring understanding your own environment and needs. Don't just assume the tool is safe or effective for your purpose. Test it rigorously.
Test, test, test. Okay. Now, shifting gears slightly again, there was also a more speculative but highly relevant discussion about the potential future trajectory of AI and what it might mean for business competitive advantage.
Yes, Uzair presented a really thought-provoking argument stemming from the concept of the AI singularity.
Just singular, okay.
If AI truly reaches a point of self-replication and self-improvement that surpasses human intelligence in a significant way, the singularity, he argued, that traditional business models and competitive advantages might essentially disappear.
Disappear? How so? What would be left?
His argument is that if a superintelligent AI can replicate and improve upon virtually everything, software development, service delivery, scientific research, knowledge work, creative output.
Basically anything humans do in business now.
Right. Then the value of companies built on those activities would rapidly diminish because the AI could do them faster, cheaper, and better. In such a scenario, the only remaining durable business moats, the only truly defensible competitive positions, would be the fundamental infrastructure providers that the AI itself relies on.
Infrastructure like energy, data centers, maybe the owners of the initial foundational models themselves.
Exactly. Energy infrastructure, the physical data centers hosting the computation, potentially the entities that own or control the most advanced foundational AI models, and maybe the few deep researchers still operating at the absolute cutting edge of fundamental breakthroughs that the AI hasn't replicated yet.
So the reasoning is that these are either physical constraints or the very building blocks of the AI's existence, things it couldn't instantly replicate or set or seed.
That's the idea. It's a stark, almost dystopian view of a future where traditional businesses could be rendered obsolete by superintelligence.
It's a provocative thought experiment for sure. Really forces you to consider the potential scale of disruption AI could bring at its theoretical extreme. But there was also a contrasting perspective shared, wasn't there? Focusing on open source AI and public AI.
Right. Chandramouli highlighted this as a counterpoint or perhaps an alternative path. He described public AI as a concentrated effort by a group hoping to build momentum and majority support around a different future.
The different future than the singularity scenario.
Yeah, one where advanced AI capabilities are not controlled by just a few powerful entities, but are accessible, open, and developed for the broader public good.
Public AI, then, sounds like an effort to democratize AI, making it a shared resource rather than a privately controlled power structure, maybe as a way to avoid that potential singularity scenario where power gets so concentrated.
That appears to be the core idea. A path towards a more equitable future for AI development and access, driven by principles of transparency and shared benefit, often relying on open source principles for the underlying technology.
Okay.
Chandramouli also mentioned that he has a planned LinkedIn series coming up discussing digital public infrastructure, public AI, and open source AI, indicating it's an ongoing exploration of these critical concepts.
So on one hand, a speculative future where AI leads to the concentration of power with infrastructure giants.
And on the other, an active movement pushing for open, public, and equitable AI.
This section really pulls together the deeper technical underpinnings, the security concerns, and these potential future trajectories of AI, connecting them to significant business implications, like what constitutes competitive advantage and the potential societal impact of different development paths.
Exactly. Understanding these nuances is key for informed decision-making in the AI age, whatever future ultimately emerges. It forces you to think beyond the current tools and immediate challenges.
Yeah, to consider the fundamental long-term shifts that might be coming and what role different approaches like proprietary development versus open or public AI will play. And speaking of fundamental shifts, let's wrap up by looking at how AI is already impacting the workforce and forcing a reevaluation of the skills needed for the future. A big piece of news that circulated in the chat and got a lot of attention was about the company's Zapier.
Yes, Zapier. The company focused on workflow automation. They made a significant, very public move.
Oh, was it?
They announced that they would require demonstrated AI fluency for 100% of its roles.
100%. Every single job.
Yeah.
From engineering to marketing to HR.
Yep.
Wow. That's a bold statement. And a clear signal about the direction they see work heading. But AI fluency, that can sound like a bit of a buzzword, can't it?
We can.
How are they defining or measuring that requirement for every single employee?
Well, Peeler and Sash both highlighted this announcement and, importantly, linked to the source where the CEO, Wade Foster, actually published how they are measuring this.
Oh, they published the methodology.
Yeah, which moves AI fluency from just a vague concept to something concrete and actionable. Their approach involves assessments and expectations tied to practical AI use in different functions.
So it serves as a real-world, pioneering example of a company not just talking about AI's impact on skills, but actively defining and implementing it as a hiring and performance requirement across the entire organization.
Exactly.
That forces everyone, doesn't it? Both individuals looking for jobs and companies defining roles to think seriously about what that skill actually entails beyond just knowing what ChatGPT is.
It really does. And this ties into a broader discussion in the chat about what skills will differentiate humans from AI in the workforce of the future. If AI can do more and more tasks, what's left that humans are uniquely positioned for or just better at?
Right. What were people saying?
Chandramouli, Sash, and Asan all contributed to this vital discussion. They explored the types of skills that AI currently struggles with, or where human capabilities remain distinct and valuable.
What kind of skills were highlighted?
Well, things like creative problem solving, generating truly novel ideas or solutions that go beyond just pattern matching, out of the box thinking.
Okay.
The ability to process nuanced and multi-layer information, especially in complex or ambiguous human contexts. Skills related to business partnering, networking, interpersonal relationships. The ability to build trust, negotiate, understand complex social dynamics.
The softer skills, but the really complex ones.
Right. And synthesis was also mentioned by Sash as a key skill, the ability to take information from diverse sources and perspectives and combine them into a coherent, insightful understanding or strategy.
So it's the more complex cognitive skills,
Hmm.
the creative and strategic functions,
Yeah.
and the deeply human-centric abilities that involve empathy, relationship building, and navigating complex social landscapes.
Precisely. And Chandramouli offered a valuable practical contrast to illustrate this point.
How so?
He talked about tasks like simple data lookup. For example, finding the geographic area name associated with a specific PIN code from a large publicly available list.
Okay, straightforward data retrieval.
Right. He noted that while you could potentially try to force an AI to do this kind of task, a simple lookup function in a spreadsheet using that public data file is a much more appropriate, efficient, and reliable tool for the job.
That's a great reminder. Just because you can use AI for something doesn't mean you should. Using the right tool for the right task is still fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental. And Olivier added another layer to this discussion, bringing in the human element of effort and mastery.
Effort and mastery.
Yeah. He pointed out that while AI, through effective prompting, can give you the illusion of being good on your first try by generating plausible content quickly.
That's the illusion of competence.
Right. But achieving truly amazing results that are insightful, creative, deeply relevant, high quality, still requires dedicated human effort. Critical evaluation, refinement, and, as he put it, putting in the hours to shape and elevate the AI's output.
That resonates deeply. AI can be a powerful co-pilot or accelerator, but it doesn't replace the need for human skill, discernment, persistence, and the effort required to achieve excellence.
It reinforces the idea that AI is a tool, and like any sophisticated tool, its ultimate effectiveness is significantly amplified by the skill, judgment, and effort of the human wielding it. The focus shifts maybe from brute force knowledge retrieval to leveraging AI for creativity, analysis, and productivity while applying those uniquely human skills.
Very well put. This conversation also touched on a crucial point about perspective, didn't it?
Yeah.
Particularly when thinking about AI development and adoption, the importance of getting outside the tech echo chamber.
Yes, Stephanie, based on her experience in a legal firm and living in Florida compared to, say, the typical Silicon Valley tech hub, highlighted the significant contrast in how AI is perceived and adopted by different groups of people. She sees both worlds.
And why is that contrast so important for anyone involved in AI?
Well, Pilar and Stephanie both discussed how being solely embedded within tech circles can create a kind of echo chamber and lead to blind spots.
How so? Blind spots about what?
People deep in the tech bubble might make assumptions about user behavior, technical literacy, or the ease of adoption that simply aren't true for the vast majority of people outside that world, the average business user, the non-technical professional, the general public.
Right. They assume everyone thinks like them or uses tech like them.
Exactly. Stephanie's experience bridging these different worlds, understanding both the cutting edge and the practical realities of enterprise adoption by typical users, is incredibly valuable precisely because she can identify that gap.
That perspective is absolutely vital, isn't it? For building AI tools, interfaces, and adoption strategies that will actually work for a broad audience, not just the early tech adopters.
It really is. Avoiding assumptions about user readiness and understanding the needs of the average user versus the tech expert is key to successful, widespread AI integration.
Definitely. This section directly addresses how AI is fundamentally impacting jobs, the skills that will be valued, and hiring practices. It prompts you, the listener, to consider your own AI fluency.
And not just in terms of knowing the tools, but understanding how to effectively integrate them into your work to amplify those uniquely human skills.
Right. And it also serves as a powerful reminder to consider user perspective and avoid the echo chamber when thinking about AI's role in the world.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. That covers a huge amount of ground. from just a week's worth of discussion and shared resources within the fellowship.
It really does.
We started right at the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah.
Tackling the fundamental question of how to strategically initiate AI adoption within an organization, emphasizing roadmaps, governance, frameworks like
And continuous improvement via PDCA. Then we journeyed to the cutting edge, exploring exciting new AI technologies like that self-improving code with the Darwin-Goodall machine.
Yeah, discussing the capabilities and real-world performance of major LLMs like Claude and ChatGPT, and highlighting specialized tools like Amazon Q for development and security, Browse.ai for web data.
And even the conceptual mind twin for mental health support.
Then we took that deep dive into the surprisingly complex practical realities of adopting a specific platform, Perplexity, within a large organization.
Dissecting all that detailed feedback on labs and particularly the granular challenges faced with spaces regarding source control, content management, sharing, user experience, performance issues.
Revealing key insights about what enterprise adoption truly requires beyond just the basic features.
And we discussed deeper, more technical and speculative considerations too, from the security risks inherent in technologies like MCP servers with their unlisted vulnerabilities.
To the challenge of testing and mean-girling LLM guardrails.
Right? And finally, contemplating the potential future economic landscape shaped by AI, contrasting potential singularity futures where only infrastructure matters with a movement towards open and public AI.
And finally, we brought back to the human element and the business impact on the workforce. How companies like Zapier are concretely defining AI fluency.
The specific skills that will differentiate humans in an AI-augmented world, the importance of complementing AI with human effort for amazing results.
And the vital necessity of gaining diverse perspectives outside the tech echo chamber when thinking about AI adoption.
It's clear that the conversations happening within the fellowship provide this dynamic, real-time window into the immediate practical challenges, the rapid technological advancements, the ethical and security considerations, and the fundamental questions shaping the future of AI in business and society.
Absolutely. So as you, our listener, reflect on all of this, the lightning pace of development, the real-world implementation hurdles, the critical need for security and control, and the evolving demands on the workforce, how will you navigate this complex landscape?
Yeah, how will you balance that undeniable drive for innovation and efficiency with the essential need for security, practicality, and ensuring AI benefits a broader, less tech-fluent audience?
And what does AI fluency truly mean for your role? And what skills will you prioritize cultivating to thrive alongside these powerful tools?
Some big questions to think about until our next deep dive.